Warren Buffett says that you only need to make one great decision every 5 years to build extraordinary wealth. Not 100, not 10, one. I think we look at what Warren has built and you think he's made a ton of good decisions. But his approach is that you're patient and make one good decision. You can do something transformational, have crazy results. So if you only need one good decision every 5 years, what do you think one financial decision for your business every month would do? Because I'm telling you, you don't need 100 financial hacks. You don't need to transform and remake everything. You just need 1 hour and one decision every month to transform your financial outcomes. At Bison CFO, we've had businesses where we mapped their cash conversion cycle in one meeting, and a year later, they had cash stacking in the bank. We would adjust pricing models and see doubled profits within 6 months. Just one strategic shift can completely change the trajectory and feel of your business. The problem isn't that most business owners don't understand their financials. Most do have the understanding that they need. It's that they don't look at them. They're not giving the time necessary to their financials. They feel overwhelming. They feel too technical. They feel like they have better things to do. But the thing is it doesn't take a lot to make a big change. So today we're going to talk about the 5-minute financial review. This is a financial review process that, as I've gone through financials for years and years and years, these are the places and things that if we only have 5 minutes, that if we look at these things, we can transform a business. All we need, this 5-minute financial review, 1 hour to ask 5 whys, and then one decision from that hour to go and make some changes. So I'm going to walk you through this document that I've created before and talk through these 5 questions or the 5 things we want to look at, and then walk through this process. So the first thing that we want to look at is we want to understand our revenue growth. We want to understand where our revenue growth is in relation to our plan, in relation to our industry peers. If we grow 10%, but our peers are growing 20, we're losing market share. So we need to understand the difference. We also want to understand the upstream metrics, meaning what sales metrics, what other inputs are going into this revenue growth number. So that if revenue is off track, we know where we need to dig in to figure out what the cause of it being off track is. The next thing we want to look at is what are our profit margins, right? So we have revenue and we have cost of goods sold. The difference between those two and the money left over is that profit margin. This is driven by all the costs that are directly related to revenue. So if our profit margins are getting worse, that means costs are going up in relation to revenue. And we want to avoid that at all costs. This is also a place we want to see early trends happen. If we don't respond to the early trends, we can find ourselves in a spot where we get backed into a corner and we have to make quick decisions, which can be bad decisions. We want to take small changes and transform the business as quickly as possible when we see those small changes. I worked for a security business at one point, and I saw a slight change in that gross margin. Being young at that time, I said, well, it's just this tiny little change. But the CEO forced me to dig in, and we figured out that it was an overtime problem that we were able to address and head off any further erosion of margins. I'm thankful for that lesson because it proved to me that slight changes can have large impacts on overall profits. Next, we want to understand what is our cash position. We want to look at 3 key numbers here. We want to look at our cash balance today, and we want to look at the trends of that cash balance. We want to look at operating cash flow, and we want to look at free cash flow. We want to see that over time, we're generating positive operating cash flows and that we have enough cash flow to reinvest in the business, which leaves us with more free cash flows. When we have and understand these three numbers, we can make sure that we don't get ourselves in a bad cash position. With overall cash, I like to think 2 to 6 months of cash balance of kind of those uh, required expenses. So the payrolls, the rents, the things that are not going to go away. Want to make sure that we have enough cash to cover that. With operating cash flow, again, I want to see that consistently positive. We can go negative for a month or two, but we don't want to see trends of negativity because that means we're not collecting on the cash or on the profits that we should be generating. And then free cash flow, I want to see again over the long term that we have positive free cash flow because that means that we're generating profits over and above the reinvestment cost needed in the business. The next one that we're going to look at is what is our cash need in the future? We want to understand both cash flow and capital needs. So we want to understand what is the cash that we need for reinvestment, what is the cash that we need for seasonality, and what is the cash that we need for other big expenses. So oftentimes I'll see taxes and insurance expenses. People forget about those things, then they have a huge payment that comes due. We also want to make sure we don't forget about that capital expenditure. We were just talking about that with free cash flow, but the reality is we have both maintenance CapEx and growth CapEx. We want to make sure we're setting aside the monies or we have the debt load available to deal with that. It's often helpful to keep a simple schedule of the obligations that you have upcoming and just reflect and review that on a monthly basis. And then the last question is, what is our debt load? We want to understand our relationship to debt, that when we have the cash, we now have flexibility and optionality when it comes to debt. And so we want to understand how our debt load is moving so that we know when we go to make reinvestments, we can answer the question, should we take on debt or should we use cash? That debt is limited, meaning at some point we could get over our maximum debt to equity ratios, our maximum debt ratios, and we want to make sure we understand that and we're tracking that and know how our upcoming plans and cash and equipment needs are impacting that debt load. Three really good ratios that we have here: debt to equity ratio, quick ratio, current or working capital ratio. There's other ratios. These are generally applicable across all sorts of industries. Uh, just look for what are the key ones in your industry. I'm not going to give you prescriptive numbers of what these ratios need to look for you. We want to look against industry averages and against your historical numbers. We start to understand that relationship. We can start to use those ratios to understand when the business is stressed or when the business is feeling good. Those are great signs, and seeing those trends in advance are ways to prepare for future trouble down the road. That's a real quick way to look through our financials. Once we've finished that, we want to think in terms of the 5 whys. We want to look at the numbers, we want to look at these questions, and we want to dig in and ask why until we get to the root cause. Why is revenue down? Why? Why are sales down? Why? Why is our close rate down? And we want to dig in to the actual reason behind. Maybe it was turnover that you had. Maybe it was bad economic conditions is causing people to reject more often because they say they don't have the money or because of the uncertainty related. We want to understand that root cause and how we can impact that root cause. Once you've done that 5 why analysis on everything that sticks out from those questions, we then want to identify what is the one lever or one decision that we can make, one lever that we can pull on to make a change between this month and next month. If you do that every single month with your financials over a period of time, you're going to see transformation. I can guarantee it. We've seen it time and time again with every business that we've worked with. Maybe it's raising prices. Maybe it's getting better at collecting. Maybe it's cutting low margin stuff. Maybe it's reworking relationships with vendors. Maybe it's restructuring debt, delaying capital expenditure. Whatever decision it is, if you consistently look at your financials 1 hour per month, look at it strategically and look at the same thing month over month, you're going to start to see trends. You're going to start to see things you can make decisions off of. And if you're consistent, about making a decision and sticking to that decision, your business is going to be in a lot better spot. Most owners are living in reactive mode, and we want to get out of that mode, and we want to think about capital allocation and financial management. When we do this, you are going to sleep better at night. You're going to feel good. Your business is going to grow in ways that you didn't think are possible. If you're serious about this and not sure how to approach it, I would love to talk to you. Feel free to reach out. Love to have a conversation about how we can help you with this. Until next time, keep looking at your financials and give me that hour a month. Have a good one.